nameless, accursed undead, unfit even to be cinder. And so it is that ash seeketh embers.
What's up YouTube, BigSweetC here with a special video for you today on what makes Dark Souls special. I mean really, what is it about this game that spawns YouTube after YouTube channel, Reddit post after Reddit post? I started my channel with Dark Souls 2, and most of the people I began following were Souls players as well. There are countless lore channels and PvP tutorials scattered on the internet, and dedicated wikis to each game. So really, what is it? I'm going to go over, at least for me, what I believe makes this franchise so addictive. I think it's a variety of things that I hope not only enlightens new players, but also inspires them to give these games a try, because I don't think there's anything quite like them. Before we start, I do want to note that I have never played Demon's Souls or Bloodborne, and while I appreciate them in a sense of the Souls universe, I will not be discussing them because of that reason. So let's begin.
Ah, another one roused from the sleep of death. Well, you're not alone. We unkindled are worthless. Can't even die right. Gives me conniptions. And they'd have us seek the Lords of Cinder and return them to their moulding thrones. But we are talking true legends, with the metal to link the fire. We're not fit to lick their boots.
The Souls games are action RPG games played through a third-person perspective, set in a medieval fantasy landscape. The enemies range from a weak undead hollow to a massive dragon that breathes fire and shoots dark magic. The gameplay itself relies on the player's battle skills with weapons and magic, with each different player choosing the skills they wish to focus on. This is the first big difference I see from most RPGs. Each weapon and spell in Dark Souls has its own unique weapon art that changes the way you use each item. Certain weapons have weak attacks that swipe horizontally, others are thrust attacks. Some weapons have strong attacks that are forward thrusts, while others are overhead smashes. It's not like Fallout, where you have a gun that shoots or a melee weapon that slashes. It is completely different than, say, Final Fantasy, where you hit the attack option, select an enemy, and watch the game animate your attack. Even Assassin's Creed essentially uses one button that does everything, depending on your situation. Dark Souls is different in that it forces you to understand how your weapons work. If you're using a thrusting weapon against an opponent strong against thrusting attacks, if you don't know how to break their guard, you're going to be there for a long time. If you go back to our Fallout example, as long as you have enough bullets, you'll eventually kill the enemy. That's not always true in Dark Souls. It's a very tough to learn game where you die, and die, and die, over and over and over again. However, once you've conquered the learning curve, there's a lot more to the game. This brings me to my next point.
Well, a newcomer, I see. I am Andre. I serve at this shrine as a humble smith, forging weapons. You're in search of the Lords of Cinder, I trust. A toilsome journey, I'd wager. You'll require good arms. Let me smith you weapons. I am a smith. Such is my purpose.
Another feature unique to Dark Souls is the plethora of character customization. While starting classes give you a lead in certain stats, as you level your character, you can choose to develop any attribute. You can start the game with a knight focused on melee damage, and by the end of your playthrough have a badass sorcerer that can wear heavy armor. You can start as a cleric focused on miracles and finish with a badass knight that can buff themselves with lightning damage. Since each class can use every weapon or spell as long as they have the appropriate attributes, customization is nearly endless. Again, this is very different than other RPGs, where normally you pick a class, and depending on your class, you earn new class-specific abilities like the Final Fantasy-style JRPGs. But even in Western RPGs like Fallout or even Dragon Age, you're still picking small guns or big guns, lock-picking or hacking, arcane warrior or blood mage, assassin or bard, etc., etc., etc. And since the addition of attribute reallocation in Dark Souls 2, character customization has become even more expansive. Whereas you play through the game and you find new items, you can reallocate your stats to be able to use these new items instead of just power leveling to get the right stats up.
Yorm, old friend. I, Siegward of the Knights of Katarina, have come to uphold my promise. Let the sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder.
The next two things I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, are more important to the reason why Dark Souls is so fantastic than the previous two. And this is why I saved them for last. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the lore of Dark Souls. I'm going to tell you a little story about the creator of the Souls franchise, Hidetaka Miyazaki. Miyazaki himself admitted he grew up dirt poor, and while he was an avid reader, because of his family's struggles, his parents couldn't afford to buy him books. So he had to use whatever was available at the local library, a lot of which was beyond his reading capabilities. At times, there would be whole sections of the books he was reading that he couldn't understand, so he had to just make those parts up in his mind. The story aspect of Dark Souls is very much the same. There are little hints here and there about who you are and what you're doing, but nothing concrete and solidifying. These plot holes in the story allow you, the player, to make up the story in your head. You define who Aldrich is and where he came from, or what it means to be a Lord of Cinder and whether Prince Lothric actually is one, since he never lit the first flame. For example, here is a theory I've been contemplating for a while now that I haven't heard a lot of speculation about from anyone else about our old friend Yorm the Giant. I think it's possible that he might be the Giant Lord from Dark Souls 2. We know that Vendrick, King of Drangleic in Dark Souls 2, waged a war against the Giants under the advice of his wife, Nashandra. We don't know exactly why, but we do know it was because Nashandra believed the Giants held something extremely powerful. There has been a lot of theories that the powerful item the Giants held might have been the Lord Vessel, which was needed to house souls strong enough to relink the first flame. When you get to the profane capital in Dark Souls 3, it looks as if the profane flame is contained in a Lord Vessel. We knew from Dark Souls 2 that Vendrick never relinked the fire, and that his wife Nashandra was a child of the Abyss. What we learned in Dark Souls 3 is that Yorm did link the fire in his world, and while that might not seem like a connection between Vendrick and Yorm, on our way to the profaned capital we find Carla, a prisoner in the Irithyll dungeon, who is also a child of the Abyss. The only two definites in Dark Souls lore is that time is convoluted, and everything is deliberately placed in each level by FromSoftware. There are no coincidences. So perhaps Nashandra and Carla are sisters, and while Vendrick fell in love with Nashandra, perhaps Yorm locked Carla away in fear of the impending darkness of the Abyss. All of this would give Vendrick a reason to not want to relink the fire and keep his age going so he can live forever with his love. And in that sense, the fear of Carla would inspire Yorm to link the first flame and restart the Age of Fire to avoid being swallowed by the Dark Abyss. This type of speculation is much different from most games, where you're told who the bad guy is, what they did, and why they need to be killed. Dark Souls lets you fill in the who, what, where, and why.
Ah, so you've chosen to serve Rosaria after all.
She will be pleased with me for finding her another finger. But be warned, my friend. Rosaria's fingers need only fetch tongues for their mistress. Otherwise, we are free, unchained. Like Yellowfinger, you can choose to believe that all fingers share camaraderie, but do not force your romance upon the rest of us.
Finally, we get to probably my favorite part of Dark Souls, invasions. I should really say PvP, but in all seriousness, there is nothing quite like invading someone else's world or being invaded in yours. A lot of games have PvP in some way, shape, or form, but not like Dark Souls. In Destiny, the PvP takes place in the Crucible, an area separate to the game engine where everyone is on equal footing. Same with Call of Duty, and Diablo 3, and Dragon Age. Even sports games like Madden, you follow the same rules. I cannot think of another game where you can conduct PvP in your own world or someone else's. When you invade, you're not on equal footing. You are bound to the rules of those you invaded. Maybe you find your enemy waiting by a bonfire, willing to take you on in a proper duel, but maybe not. You could find yourself in the world of a user of a giant seed. Now it's you against your opponent and the level. And if you're really lucky, you'll invade a world where the host has other player friends called summons. Now it's you against all of them. Truly a unique experience, as you never know exactly what you're going to get. On the flip side, there's nothing quite like having another player invade your world hell-bent on killing you at all costs. Again, perhaps your invader is a sportsman who'll meet you at the nearest bonfire for a friendly duel. But then there are those who will run up on you when the level is about to kill you, or creep up behind you and stab you in the back when you're looking the other way. I promise you, there is nothing like the rush of vanquishing a deadly invader when you're on the verge of death, or even accomplishing the impossible and killing your target when surrounded by death while invading a host with multiple summons. Invasions are definitely a unique experience to the Souls universe.
Gracious Lord, make London whole.
I'll finish this by inviting you all out there to share your stories as to what makes Dark Souls special. As I said before, the reason I made this video is to inspire those of you who haven't had this experience to finally do so. It looks as if the Ring City DLC for Dark Souls 3 might be the last addition to this amazing franchise. And while it's never too late to start playing Dark Souls, it really does have a different feel when there's more activity. As much as I love going back and playing Dark Souls 1 and 2, I feel at a loss knowing that there's probably very little chance that I'll get invaded, or be able to summon someone for a tough boss fight. The online multiplayer does give the game a completely new feel, rather than just playing against the game engine. I hope this video has been somewhat entertaining, and I appreciate you lasting this long. If you did make it this far, if you could please hit that like and or subscribe button, as it's the only way to support the channel, and I do appreciate all the support I can get. Either way, that's going to wrap this one up. BigSweetC, that's me, wishing YouTube, that's you, wonderful day, night, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day you might be watching. As long as you're watching, I'm wishing you a wonderful watching time. Sweetness, signing off. Peace.